speaking coach that when we start talking about the things that we see that we don't like, we're able to turn it around really quickly and say, oh, we know that people don't like these things. Let's not do them. Let's do the exact opposite of that thing. So it started with me grousing about what I saw in AI as I was shopping for a new vehicle. And I do what you do. You go online and you start looking for vehicles in your area and finding out what the specs are and reading magazines that do test drives. And I saw some pretty wild stuff. I think we've all learned, have we or have we not? Please comment if you've done this, where you type something in Google and the first thing you get is the Google AI answer before they get to the search listings. And what I've discovered is it's wrong about 20% of the time. It's just garbage information. And so what I've learned is to ignore that, to go right past that Google stuff. Do you do that too? Because when it's 20% wrong and made up stuff, how do I know which 20% is wrong and which 80% is right? I can't. So I don't trust it and I just dismiss it. Does anybody else do that too? Oh, Vanessa says she's here and she's from Pasco, Washington. Thank you for joining us here today, Vanessa. And LinkedIn user is here to say, hey, everyone. And Latrice is here to say, howdy from Greensboro, North Carolina. Thank you for joining us. And please do feel free to chime in on some of the worst practices you've seen. So the lack of truth was a thing that was driving me bananas as I was searching for a car. So I finally get this idea and I get to see the car that I want. So I go to the dealership page and say, hey, here's the car that I want. Can I come in at 6 o'clock for a test drive? And instantly it texts me back and says, sure, 6 o'clock is great. We have the name of the model that you want. We'll have it prepped and ready for you. Awesome. I show up at the dealership at the appointed hour. And guess what? I asked for Tony, the name of the guy who, texted me. And there are 3 salespeople that I approach saying, hey, which one of you is Tony? And they're playing cards. They are literally playing cards. They are so bored. There is no one there but me. And they laugh in my face and say, ho, Tony is our AI bot. We have no idea what Tony does. I'm like, well, Tony told me to come here at 6 o'clock and do a test drive that you'd have the vehicle ready for me. We don't even have that vehicle. So they laughed in my face. Tony didn't tell them I was coming, and they didn't have the vehicle. But we have other vehicles to show you. Now, does this make me trust this dealership? No, it does not. Have you ever been through anything like this? So this is Robert Armand saying hello from Greensville, North Carolina. Hello and welcome to the show. Please pop in your worst practices because I want to hear some feedback from Elizabeth and Scott on what went wrong with this AI. What was a worst practice that you could spot in what I went through?
Yeah. So Laura, a couple things. One is Google actually gives you the option now to filter with or without AI responses. So that was a new enhancement that's been made over the last, week or so. And I think if we think about AI responses specifically in search, I think it's very similar to Wikipedia, which is search is going and looking at all the responses that people give and then giving an amalgamation of all of them, like combining them all together. And it doesn't know if it is accurate or inaccurate. It's just taking all the information and then giving you a summary back. It's a little bit like Amazon reviews. It doesn't, give any more weight or not to some of the worst things that have happened. One person could have had a bad experience, but that's still going to come up in the AI response in Amazon. And so I think some of when we look at, all the things that have happened, if we look at your car dealership experience, we have this excitement and everyone is really excited to use artificial intelligence, even though they're not exactly sure what how to use it, how to leverage it, what are the best practices that go along with it. And I know we're talking about sort of worst practices here, but I would say the worst practice, just to summarize what happened to you, is really the fact that there wasn't any education given. So it was like they used this tech to try to, give a help them leverage their leads in a 24/7. That's not the bad part. The bad part is they didn't actually train the AI to give accurate responses. That's like base level. And the second thing is they didn't train their staff into how the baton gets passed from what the AI does to what the human needs to pick up. So in summary, I guess that's how I look at that situation. Scott, I'd love to hear what your thoughts are as well.
Yeah, you both know, we went through a car buying process recently. My son bagged his first year with a Honda Civic, and so one of the things about Laura's story is that I think it's just weird in the integration standpoint that these dudes playing cards didn't get messages. So Tony is the name of your friend?
I forgot what his name was. I just said Tony because I can't remember the name of an AI bot from a month ago.
Tony should be sharing his calendar with the salespeople. The other thing too is that just from a non-AI or system integration standpoint, your first appearance was basically Wayne and Garth telling you, fished you in, right?
Yeah.
It's just like you fell for that. I mean, just like, okay, how stupid could you be falling for that, right, Laura?
Yeah.
What makes you want to buy a car?
Yeah. Well, now I'm going to take my AI hat off for a while and say, as a sales trainer hat, laughing at a customer in their face and deceiving them is not a really great sales tactic. It's just not. And I want to get back to a commenter, Mignon Fogarty, Grammar Girl. You may know her from her famous podcast, says, it reminds me of the early days of the web when you'd order a pizza online and when you showed up, they had not received the order and had no idea who you were. I think you're absolutely correct there. It leads me to my whole, I think they did AI for AI's sake. Yeah. It's a worse practice. I'm like, let's do AI. It's trendy. People like AI. Let's just do this thing. So there's no pilot of how this is going to work or training the human system of, how are we managing this?
Yeah, I agree, Laura. I mean, there's not only is it sort of like the trendy piece, but I think it's also the idea of FOMO, right? It's like I have to do this thing because I don't want to worry about being left behind, or I don't want to not be able to say that I'm also leveraging this in my business. And I'm gonna be a little bit of like beating a dead horse today, but human is still required. Yeah, is a required component of artificial intelligence for the foreseeable future, right? We have no self-aware models right now. And so from that standpoint, humans need to understand where they play the role, like where they are needed within this process. And I think that there's sort of like three places that the human needs to be involved. Number one, the human needs to be involved from the, what am I going to use artificial intelligence for? Like what's the goal here that I have? The second thing is making sure that it's accurate. So how do you give the information that's foundational? What's the knowledge base that you need to build? And then when you put that in, you get the response. Am I getting the right response? So there's that training piece. And then the third piece is, okay, it's fulfilling this one piece of your business. Like, where are you going to be involved after the AI is done doing the AI thing? And so I think that those are really important pieces to make sure that the human is still involved.
Yeah, and going back to just like carbon-based issues with the customer service. I'm talking about people, of course. When my son, he got imprinted fairly deeply with the first car that he looked at, but I went and looked at some of the other ones he had been interested in his day off, and he had sent me text of the dealership, and you can probably tell that I wasn't born yesterday, but And the thing is, I have habits. I mean, I've been, bought my first new car many, many weeks ago. And I went to a dealership where there was like, several of the used models he was looking for were on the lot. And I didn't have an appointment. I didn't go to the web first. But historically, a body walked onto a dealership, people were just all of a sudden like going, incoming, who's got it? Like sort of thing. And I walked by probably half a dozen people. I know some were talking to customers, but that has always been the case in any sort of retail situation. But I mean, some organizations teach you that some, people in customer service can do this, naturally. They just like, excuse me, somebody will be right with you. That's all it takes. And I just lost interest and walked away.
Catherine Whitehead remarks, critical thinking is important for company implementing AI tools, and from the end user who is reading and interacting with the content. You're spot on, Catherine Cat. I think that's exactly what happened to me. They underestimated how the salespeople were going to interact with the AI.
Yeah.
When you think about it, these folks were literally playing cards. There was nothing to do. Could they have responded to me in a human fashion? Why did they need to automate this?
Well, I mean, so I'm going to a little bit sort of speak for the AI here because
Okay.
I'm the
Fair
advocate
enough.
for it.
The AI empath.
So I think that there is a place that AI plays within that scenario. I think that where we experienced the worst part of it was the fact that, number one, it wasn't trained. So it's like the idea of it was great. So the idea of it is 24/7. It can answer whatever questions you have. It can give information about what they have for inventory, and really help so that you're a warmer customer when you come in. That would be the theory behind it. And when we implement it, that's certainly what we're training it to be able to do. What I think happened in this situation is I think it was probably like a very exciting moment that was had by management where they brought this in, they worked in a silo, and they thought it could do it on its own. And I do sort of a little bit put some blame on whoever it was that created this AI system for the car dealership, because they obviously didn't do good education about what information was needed to train it. And then I think there's the other piece that people often forget is there's still training that needs to happen for your staff on where are the boundaries of what the AI can do. Like the AI is just warming up. It's the same way as if you were to hire like a lead, somebody to get leads for you. Like they're not going to complete the sales cycle. Mm-hmm. And I'm mortified, to be honest, Laura, at the situation of the fact that not only did you walk in on a team of people that were playing cards, but I'm also mortified at the fact that they felt that it was appropriate to make you feel bad because you had an experience with a technology that they brought on that did not give accurate information. I mean, when you first shared that story with me, I felt sick to my stomach about it.
Well, it wasn't your fault. Don't feel bad, Elizabeth. You didn't do anything about this. But you bring up a good point about underestimating what the people who are actually on the floor or in the trenches going to do with this thing. And apparently they hadn't been trained on AI at all, or management made the mistake and thought, well, you know what? They're all young people. They'll just understand how to do this without any kind of training whatsoever. And I think that is sort of a common thing that I'm seeing with AI, that a lot of us older folks think, well, young people, they just know how to do things. It's all natural to them. They'll just pick it up without any kind of training.
Yeah, I agree.
Latrice, thank you for joining us, Latrice. Latrice says, there's still a need for checks and balances with AI. I don't think you can just set it and forget it. And I think Latrice is right. And I will add another weird little story of what happened to me as I was searching for a car, as I was narrowing in on what I really wanted. The Google AI was telling me, as I was doing my little tippy-tappy search, that it came standard with halogen headlights. And I started reading a very famous magazine that does test drives, and the test drive, buried about, 2,000, 3,000 words in the article, said, the only thing I didn't like about the test drive was that it had halogen headlights. when I went to the dealership and drove the car and looked at the specs, he says, geez, we haven't had halogen headlights in I don't know how long. No, they're not standard on that. Google didn't tell you the right information. But think about it this way. Not only did it give me the wrong information, the tech writer who did the test drive just picked up that information and ran with it. So it replicated it. So we're getting even more bad data when we don't really double check what's happening with that data. All right, we've got a long comment here, but Ariel, my girl Ariel, how you doing, Ariel? Good to hear from you. Says, regardless of what got you in the door, once you're there, you'd think at least one salesperson would have been motivated to provide you with the best customer service, if for no other reason than for their own commissions. Seriously, you're singing my song, Ariel, because sure, we're learning more and more about AI, but that doesn't abdicate responsibility from us doing our human connection with our human clients. That's where humans really shine. And we need to take ownership of that and say, AI might replace my job, but can it replace my charm? Can it replace my warmth? Can it replace my spontaneity? These are all soft skills that are actually power skills that we need to develop.
Yeah, Laura, I also noticed that Vanessa had a comment as well that, she tried to schedule a job interview, shows up, and they were unaware she was even coming in. I mean, these are reputational issues. I cannot emphasize that enough. These are not just like tech mishaps. These these can potentially be dramatic impacts in the reputation of your company. So I would say that when you think about implementing, different types of AI, certainly when you think about voice AI or chat AI, things like that are going to take on a function basically within your business, you better make sure that it's working, because these are types of things that people have a lot of social content that can come out of. And, they're not always going to be as kind as Laura is, which is not sharing who it was that she had this experience with or where she's seen these mishaps with. They will very clearly dictate who it was that it came from, like in this situation. And then that leads back to, degrading the reputation of your business. So it does come with needing to make sure you have that.
Yeah, we were discussing, a worst practice is, are we neglecting the governance? Is management taking responsibility? Are they making sure that all of this information is filtering down to the rank and file? Are they putting up the guardrails? In this instance, I had, just the impression that, no, we're doing this because it's trendy. We need to deploy fast. And a whole host of things went completely wrong with that. The Wendy's example is also, another example of that, or another instance of we're seeing, let's get this done fast and let's not lay the basics in place. What else are you seeing?
Can I just say something distantly related to the Wendy's situation? This is not really an AI issue per se. This is a more generic IT sort of situation. But are you familiar with the recent news that came out of McDonald's with their AI interview system?
Tell me more.
Hackers were able to get into it because it was, nothing is on premise anymore. Very few things are on premise. So you're reliant on the vendor to be using best IT practices. The password for their system, root password, was 123456.
Oh no!
So like millions of records got taken from the McDonald's service provider.
I think that's more of a security issue than an AI issue.
Security. It's not AI. It was the AI system, but it was bad practice.
I would
21st century information system, database, or anything else should not allow that password.
Well, there are so many things wrong with that situation. I don't even think we have enough time to go down the issues there. But yeah, I mean, the fact that there weren't mixed requirements for characters, minimum length. I mean, there's 1,000 things wrong with that. Yeah. I thought you were going to actually talk about how some of the AI systems, specifically in HR and job searching, are actually showing bias.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought you were going down more that path.
Yeah, I was going to say I'm seeing a lot of. I didn't even type it in here, but yeah, bias is a huge a huge deal with AI, and we're seeing rather a lot of that. Along with the bias, one thing that has come into the news rather a lot, especially in my news feed, is using AI for hiring and for firing instead of putting that guardrail up. Once again, the lack of guardrails of something that requires human judgment. We've got a little bit of softness there that we need to exercise our critical thinking and judgment, and saying, hey, let's just let AI handle our 360 performance reviews. Let's AI handle our hiring and firing. It needs some guardrails. It's like you can't drive the car, those self-driving cars. You can say, well, let's just let it out in the road and see what happens. There has to be some piloting.
I live in fear that somebody's going to fire the wrong Scott Smith or something like that.
Oh, for sure. I have one sad little story to tell that, and this happened to me a few years ago, where HR was using automatic face recognition to let you into the building and let you out for security. Mm-hmm. And the AI recognized me as, and this is a direct quote, a pig-like mammal. Now, this is true. I am a pig-like mammal. However, it's pretty insulting to call a human being a pig-like mammal.
Right.
And it wasn't specific enough to let me into the building. So we had to have some human intervention there because they weren't going to let a pig-like mammal into the building. Have you been recognized?
I would not expect that. I would expect to be called meatbag or something like that.
Yeah.
I bet.
Yeah. Okay. We have a user. Thank you, user. I'm your pusher. You're my user. It's fine. Documentation and knowledge management is step 0 for AI. I think I've heard Elizabeth actually say that. Often sadly overlooked, but it lays the groundwork and foundation for this tool to be able to function and help people deploy it in a useful way.
Could not agree more.
Absolutely.
Okay. What other worst practices have we seen?
Well, do you mind if I just go back to the bias piece?
Go to the bias piece.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a lot of bias, right, in these tools just inherently. And part of that's because of who actually trained them to begin with. And then that gets laddered on. So we have a few things that have happened in bias, like where women are typically, if AI is given its way, women are never qualified for tech jobs. Because it's not, there aren't enough women that have been in tech jobs to actually prove to the AI that women can do tech jobs. And so some of these bias, when we go back to like this the 360 reviews and things like that, how do we know that the information? So let's hypothetically say that it gives that we could use the system to do that. Would we want to use the system to do that when there is so much bias already in the tools? And I'm very sensitive to women and females because of the fact that there is so much bias from the standpoint that women weren't really involved in the training of these tools to begin with. We don't have enough women using these tools to even start to move that needle at all. So if you are a woman watching that is not currently using AI chat tools, in your sort of life, I would encourage you to start doing that and then educating it when it gives you inaccurate information so that we can continue to get sort of our sensitivity. Laura, a lot of that like empathy and things like that come from us. It doesn't come from the machine, and it doesn't come from, programmers that I think inherently aren't necessarily the ones that have the most emotional intelligence. Not to say that there aren't some that do, but it's not usually high on their level of skills.
Elizabeth, I got to say, though, I'm a little put out and a little mad that the responsibility falls on me and women in general to do unpaid labor to fix the bias problem of AI. That seems...
Nobody else is doing it, Laura. So I guess we've got that issue.
I know. Robert chimes in with, the data used in training AI is from people entering data on the LLM level. The data is full of biases, and that's why one AI responses will never be the same as the second AI response. I really enjoyed listening and reading the article of the woman who said a week of AI. She was a New York Times reporter where she let AI make all the decisions for her. And, well, what a risky proposition for an entire week. Everything from, hey, what clothes am I wearing to the office? What am I eating? Schedule my calendar. She did it all. And she found significant differences in what Claude recommended, what ChatGPT recommended, and what Microsoft Copilot would recommend, and various degrees of ethical implications of what she got is part of her feedback. So yeah,
We
that's
can thank the
happening.
New York Times writers for a lot of things, right? I mean, the reason why we're in this like straight up hockey stick moment of AI right now all goes back to a New York Times writer. So they're doing fun stuff over there to get us excited.
Latrice is chiming in with, she's not surprised at all with the bias, and certainly I'm not either. I've definitely seen bias that is quite rankling in the responses that I get. Just like the gentleman that was falsely accused of stealing from an Apple store due to facial recognition. I wonder if they thought that he was a pig-like mammal. We don't know. Can AI recognize nuance in context and history? I am not convinced at all that it can. I am seeing racial bias. I'm seeing gender bias. It's been a lot, an absolute lot. Or as Ariel says, we're clearly still in the wild, wild west stage of AI tools. Would you agree with that, Elizabeth?
Yeah, and I think the wildest of the Wild West hasn't even hit us yet. I think we're actually not too far away from that, but I totally agree.
Okay.
Well, are we ever going to get past that though? Because we are, at a point now where a lot of internet content is being generated by AI, and to use is it Cory Doctorow?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Not E.L. Doctorow. That was the author. But enshittification is, going to be something that we're going to see, higher and deeper. Man.
No, it was really eye-opening too to see that the errors that AI makes in its responses get replicated in responsible journalists. They aren't doing the fact checking. I think there was even an instance of a book review insert. I think it was in the Chicago papers, where the majority of the books that they reviewed were books that did not even exist. They just took the information and ran with it. And I would say that is definitely a worst practice, that whatever you're getting from AI, recognize that a lot of it is garbage, a lot of it is biased, and that you absolutely must double check everything. And unfortunately, you can't double check it on Google anymore, because Google's going to puke out some of the bad data once again. Fortunately, I live near a library, so I can do some of the work that I need to do.
I do think some of that responsibility is back to us, right? Like you cannot use AI to become an expert in something you are not an expert in. Like that's just at a base level. But there are tools like Perplexity, even when you use sort of advanced, deep research, they come back with actual citations, right? Like here's the link to where I pulled this information from. It is up to you to follow that link and make sure that link actually exists. Just because it comes back with a link doesn't mean that the information it referenced from that link is what it gave you. And, these are machines that are doing very complex returns, right? Like the information we're asking them to do in a very short amount of time. And it is very common for them to get gobbledygook. If we did a full day's worth of research, we're not going to be great by the end of the day. You know what I mean? Like that's a little bit the same thing that happens here. Hallucination it's not like it does it on purpose. It thinks what it's giving you is right, but it doesn't always, the wires sometimes aren't wired in the right way when they give you
you're absolutely right. I've come across many hallucinations, and that's an actual tech term just for people who think we're goofing around. It's not. AI will hallucinate and just blah blah tell you something that is patently untrue. My favorite example is I asked it to brainstorm with me, and I asked it to give me 10 little known facts about the month of May. And it said, did you know that May is the only month that has all vowels and no consonants? Okay, that's clearly not true. However, what if I had taken that fact and ran with it? How silly would I look? There's a lot of things embedded in there. So those top 10 things that may or may not have been true, you really do need to double check whatever it decides to give you, no matter how silly.
Well,
That's all the time we have for today. I want to thank everyone for joining us for this robust and somewhat lively conversation. Thank you for joining us. Elizabeth Godey, you can find her and connect with her. I watched her do an excellent speech and another podcast on AI, including The Future of AI is Female, which I love. Love the title of that especially. And Scott, you can connect with Scott Smith as well. So thank you for joining us today, and wave goodbye.
Bye.